Karen parked 2 trucks on my ranch. She forgot I'm not a member and I own that lot. They always say country life is quiet, that moving out past the city lines buys you peace, space, and a kind of dignity you can't get in a gated community. That's what I thought, too, when I signed the deed to Parcel 48. I'm Noah Price, retired Coast Guard officer, now full-time rancher and sometime thorn in the side of fake bureaucrats. I came out here for air. After decades of public service, I wanted land that was mine, no bosses, no sirens, no politics, just sky, fence line, and pasture. What I didn't know was that just a few plots down the ridge was a woman who made it her business to control everyone else's. Her name was Karen Mattingly Brooks. She didn't own the most land, but she talked like she did. She ran a voluntary HOA on the edge of the old Whispering Pines development, just 27 houses, most of them still half-built or waiting on permits. Somehow, that didn't stop her from walking around in heels on gravel, clipboard in hand, collecting dues from scared retirees and threatening fines for grass length and mailbox color. And the moment she saw my gate go up, she made me her next mission. It was the third day after I put in my gate. Steel, custom, clean, welded it myself, had a little keypad with a wireless camera because I wasn't about to let some surveyor accidentally wander onto my acreage. The knock came just after 7 a.m. I opened the door in my flannel and boots, coffee still in hand. There she was, Karen, crisp pink blouse, sunglasses propped on her head like a crown, and a binder labeled Ranch Cooperative Entry Guidelines. "You must be the new owner of Parcel 48, she said with a bright, fake smile. I'm Karen. I run the HOA here, Whispering Pines HOA, and technically, you're within our jurisdiction." I raised an eyebrow. "That's funny. My deed says I'm outside the subdivision and outside the HOA lines." She paused, eyes flicking downward just for a second. "We're in the process of expanding. To preserve property values, I'm sure you want the community protected. I've got fencing, floodlights, and my name on the deed. That's all the protection I need." Then I shut the door. I found them on a Tuesday. 2 lifted Dodge Rams, both with Whispering Pines contractor magnets on the doors, blocking the southern entrance to my lot. It was my private access gravel cut through a marshy field I'd cleared myself to reach the cattle run, and they were parked just so, nose to tail, like they were daring me to get through. I called the number on the door magnets. "This is Price. You've got 2 trucks blocking my land." "Oh, Karen said it was community overflow," the kid stammered. "Said it's technically HOA property, so we should be fine to park." I hung up, got my bolt cutters, and walked out there. That's when Karen herself pulled up, in her white Lexus SUV, horn honking like I was the trespasser. "You can't cut that chain," she screeched. "This is my land," I said calmly, "and you're obstructing it." "I have maps," she said. "I've spoken to the county. You're inside the HOA expansion zone." She waved a stack of printed Google Maps at me. No signatures, no seals, no county stamp, just a red line someone had drawn in Sharpie. I didn't say anything. I just walked up, cut the lock on the truck's chain, and rolled the first one into the ditch. The truck rolled smoothly down into the shallow ditch, dust curling around its tires. I'd thrown it into neutral and guided it like a sack of trash off my land. Karen screamed like I'd pushed a baby off a cliff. "You assaulted private property," she shouted. "No," I said. "I moved an obstruction off my private land. I'm calling the sheriff." I pointed to the camera mounted just above my gate. "Good. They can look at the footage too." She sped off, nearly fishtailing her Lexus across the gravel, and I didn't see her for 3 days. But her absence was just the eye of the storm. 3 days later, I got a letter taped to my front gate. Official looking, heavy stock, fake seal that said Whispering Pines Residential Authority. I opened it with my Leatherman right there on the fence line. Violation, Rockery 102, unauthorized removal of community vehicles. Fine $2, $750. Payable to Whispering Pines HOA within 10 business days. There was no address, no phone number, no reference to county records, Just a P.O. box and a signature in blue ink K. Mattingly Brooks, interim director. I laughed so hard I nearly fell over. Then I did what any good landowner would do. I drove straight to the county clerk's office. That's where things started unraveling faster than I expected. Whispering Pines HOA, the clerk said, tapping keys on her ancient computer. We've got one on file. It's marked inactive. Since when 2017? Last board meeting was 6 years ago. Never re-registered. No current filings. No expansion plans approved. What about parcel 48? She flipped to the map overlay and pointed with her pen. You're here. That's private land. Zoned agricultural. Not HOA controlled. Not even contiguous. Meaning. That woman has no legal claim over your land. I grinned. That's all I needed to hear. But the problem was, she didn't care what was legal. The next time I went into town, I came back to find a folding sign at my front gate. Notice HOA dispute in process. Access temporarily suspended. They'd put orange cones across my entrance. Someone had even spray-painted community easement across my private gravel path. She wasn't just overstepping, she was trying to rewrite reality. So I posted a sign of my own. Big, red, legalese. Private property trespassers will be recorded and prosecuted under County Code R 36-104. And then I called a friend of mine, a retired deputy named Jack Halberd, who still held a state investigator license. I asked him to look into Karen quietly. Jack didn't take long to call back. You're not going to like this, he said. She's filed permits in your name. What she's forged your parcel ID onto HOA planning documents. Says she's requesting a variance for parking and storage on your land. That was it. This wasn't annoying anymore. This was criminal. Turns out, Karen had been pulling this fake HOA stunt for years. She'd resurrected the Whispering Pines name, printed out some letterhead, and started bullying new homeowners into paying monthly dues under threat of reporting them to zoning. Some were too scared to question her. Some just thought she was official, but it wasn't real. The whole HOA hadn't had a board since 2017. No meeting, no public votes, no filings. Karen was the HOA, and she'd used it to scare a lot of people. But I wasn't one of them. So I did what she feared most. I brought it public. I didn't go to the county with a lawyer. I went with a folder. Inside were pictures of her fake tickets, copies of her notices, a printout of the county map showing parcel 48 squarely outside HOA lines, and a flash drive with video of her screaming at me over the truck I rolled into the ditch. But I didn't go to the courthouse first. I went to the press. See, in a small county like ours, everyone knows someone who works at the paper. And our local paper, the Hills County Observer, ran on stories just like this. I sat down with a young reporter named Eden. She had a sharp pen and a sharper glare when she smelled corruption. I gave her everything, all of it. What exactly are you hoping to expose, she asked. I want people to know she's a fraud, that they don't owe her a cent, that she's been parking on land she doesn't own, forging documents, and intimidating people who just wanted a quiet life. Eden nodded and leaned back. This is going to get messy. Good, I said, and messy it got. The story ran that Friday. Fake hoe targets. Veteran Rancher County investigating forged documents and land disputes. Underneath the headline was a photo of Karen's violation letter and a screenshot of her spray-painted cones across my gate. Within 24 hours, the phones at Whispering Pines were ringing off the hook, but Karen didn't hide. She went nuclear. Monday morning, she sent out flyers titled Emergency Hoe Town Hall, Community Must Stand Together Against Outside Threats. She called me the threat, claimed I was trying to dissolve their protective infrastructure, said I was dangerous, said I was armed and unstable. I knew where that was going. She wanted someone else to call the cops, to paint me as the aggressor. I'd seen this tactic used in D.C. Circles let fear do the dirty work, but I was already ahead of her. I printed the deed to my land on a 3-foot-wide canvas and brought it to the town hall. I wasn't invited. I showed up anyway. It was held in the unfinished clubhouse, a slab floor with half-hung drywall and a stage made of plywood. About 30 residents were there, folding chairs in circles, most of them confused, a few nodding along to her every word. Karen stood center stage in a pastel suit, arms outstretched like she was giving a TED Talk. We must protect our community from land exploitation and people who think they're above the law. I held up the canvas deed. This land, I asked, the one you parked your trucks on? That's mine. You forged my parcel ID and submitted it to the zoning board. That's a felony. The room went silent. I walked to the front and laid the canvas deed flat. Here's the county seal. Here's the zoning line. You're not just out of bounds, you're out of time. Karen's face paled. You're trespassing, she said weakly. Your HOA isn't real. I replied. Then I turned to the room. She's been charging dues with no legal authority, threatening people, forging permits, pretending to represent the law. But she's not the law. She's a parasite. And that was when the first neighbor stood up. It was a woman named Patrice, middle-aged, soft-spoken. She held up a manila envelope. She fined me $400 for painting my fence off white, she said quietly. Told me if I didn't pay, I'd lose my property rights. I was afraid. Another voice. She said my vegetable garden was a code violation, and another she took $200 from my aunt for security patrols. There are no patrols, I looked around the room. Every face was waking up. Karen backed away like a cornered animal. None of this is true, she said. They're all confused. This man is dangerous, but the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. And I hadn't even brought the receipts yet. Karen ran, not out the door, but through the side exit of the clubhouse, leaving behind her flyers, her authority, and the last sliver of control she had. She thought that would be the end. But the town had just gotten started. Jack, my retired deputy friend, had been quietly working the phones while I was at the meeting. The moment I texted him that Karen had fled, he walked into the county clerk's office with a folder thicker than a dictionary, inside copies of every fake violation letter with Karen's handwriting, forged permit forms with my parcel number and her signature, a timeline of all HOA filings since 2017 showing they were void, a notarized statement from one of her former board members, who admitted Karen wrote every HOA decision alone. The clerk scanned the files, and by sundown, the County Compliance Division had opened an investigation. The next morning, deputies arrived at Karen's house with a warrant to search her home office. That same day, residents at Whispering Pines held a real meeting. This one didn't include Karen. They posted flyers across the neighborhood emergency community gathering End the Fraud, Reclaim Our Voice. More than 60 people showed up, families, veterans, elderly residents, even teenagers with smartphones ready to live stream. One after another, they told stories. Karen had banned Halloween decorations for moral decency, ordered fines for backyard trampolines, threatened to tow vehicles parked longer than 6 hours, collected nearly $40,000 in dues over the past 2 years. But it wasn't just money. It was fear. She'd weaponized HOA language to isolate people, to divide them, intimidate them, and make herself the final authority. But now, no one was scared of her anymore. They formed a dissolution committee that very night. Karen's Whispering Pines HOA was formally voted defunct permanently. And then the lawsuits started rolling in. A class action lawsuit was filed within 3 weeks. I was asked to be a witness. I agreed without hesitation. In court, Karen tried to play the victim, claimed she was only trying to keep standards up, that her community spirit had been misunderstood. The judge wasn't having it. You impersonated a governing body, he said sternly. You forged land documents. You charged fees under false pretenses. You harassed and extorted residents. This is not community service. This is fraud. Karen was fined $115 or $1,000 in restitution. Her trucks, the ones she parked on my land, were seized by the sheriff's department and auctioned to pay part of the damages. Her pastel world cracked, but the real damage that was to her reputation. Within days, her name was smeared across every local paper, blog, and HOA legal forum from here to Sacramento. Videos from the clubhouse meeting went viral. One of them had over 2.1 million views. A subreddit dedicated to HOA abuse featured her face on their banner for a week with the caption, "The Fake Queen of Whispering Pines." I didn't rejoice, but I did feel justice, and I knew the town did too. The quiet after a storm is unlike anything else. There's a heaviness in the air, not from damage, but from release. That was Whispering Pines in the months after Karen fell. The pastel signs were gone. The no street parking stickers were peeled off lampposts. The mailbox warnings had vanished. And for the first time since I bought my ranch, I heard laughter at night instead of complaints. The fake queen was dethroned. But what came next mattered more than what fell. After the HOA was officially dissolved and the lawsuits began to move through court, residents met weekly this time, in the community center after it was properly permitted. No one was forced to attend, no dues were collected, but the group called itself the Pine Circle. They weren't trying to rebuild a new HOA. They were building a neighborhood based on trust, consent, and real choice. The first change, they returned nearly $22,000 to residents who had proof of extorted fines, thanks to the restitution order from Karen's trial. A local nonprofit lawyer worked pro bono to handle it all. Then they passed a neighborhood resolution. No governing board shall operate without unanimous opt-in and regular public audits. That clause alone would have stopped Karen in her tracks if it had existed before. And you know what else they invited me to join? I declined. Not because I didn't believe in them, but because I knew better now. My ranch wasn't part of their circle, and that was just fine. We could be neighbors without ownership. Karen tried to move out of state, but the judgment followed her. Turns out, her fraudulent HOA wasn't her only sin. Investigators uncovered she'd claimed tax-exempt status as a nonprofit, but none of the records showed charitable expenses. She funneled it all into her personal account. That meant federal charges. She took a plea deal, no prison, but 5 years probation, mandatory community service, and complete surrender of her Whispering Pines assets, including her big 2-story house. The new owners, a young couple with a disabled child who'd been fined by Karen 3 times for having a non-conforming ramp. Karma, sometimes, is elegant. And me, I stayed. I rebuilt the portion of my pasture where her trucks had torn up the topsoil. Took a week in a rented grader, but the grass came back. I added a gate camera. I put up a big sign that read, "Private ranch not subject to HOA. Trespassers will be videotaped and laughed at." Every now and then, someone still asks if I'm part of the association. I smile and say, "Nope. I belong to my own land." That's more than enough. And that canvas deed still hanging in my barn, stained, frayed at the edges, and a reminder that knowing the truth matters more than yelling louder. Power unchecked will always reach for more. Karen wasn't dangerous because she wore pastels and called herself a president. She was dangerous because people believed her lies or were too tired to fight them. That's how tyranny works in small places. Quiet, polite, on letterhead. But it only takes one truth, held up loud enough, to tear it down. If you ever feel powerless in your community, remember this: your land, your voice, your rights, they still matter. Hey, don't let anyone weaponize rules to control you. Push back, even if you stand alone with a sign and a smile. Have you ever experienced a power-hungry HOA or someone pretending to have authority they don't? Where should the line be drawn between community rules and personal freedom? Share your story, share your thoughts, debate the line. Let's talk about real justice and where it begins right at our front gates.